So I would love just one more applause if you guys would help me welcome our first leader, Jennifer. Oh, I think I just got an Arsenio Hall over there somewhere. That's awesome. Well, if there's a quality that I absolutely cherish about people, it's authenticity. And I will have to say, this lady right here is as genuine as it gets. You see lots of head nods. So I'm so grateful that you are going to be here and share raw, real, authentic life with us. You ready?
I think so.
Let's do it. All right. So when we had our preliminary meeting, you said something to me that was so poignant. And that was, my story isn't really about me, but it is, right? And that's because your story, your transformation, your testimony, it really kind of centers around someone else's health battle, you know? So take us back to when that journey first began, when your youngest daughter, Mariah, was 9 years old and woke up one morning with a headache.
Wow. Is this on? Okay.
There we go.
Well, my daughters are both sitting in the audience, and Mariah's up front, so I already talked to her, then told her I was going to be sharing her story. So this is really her story that I've been a spectator and a messy mess on the ride with her, and she thinks that's funny. So it started out when Mariah was 9 years old. Mariah had a headache that wouldn't go away for an entire week. She laid on the couch. We took her to several doctors to figure out what was going on. Never in my mind did it occur to me something grave was going to be going on. About 7 days in to having a headache, we took her to Children's Healthcare. And we found out after the doctor came in, she says, I'm pretty sure we're just going to run a few labs. She's probably got a virus. You know, we're just going to check her out and do a real quick CT scan and make sure everything's good. And so the doctor came in with the deer in headlights look about 10 or 15 minutes later. And having worked in healthcare myself for so long, I knew the behind the scenes, I knew how physicians were, and I knew their faces, and I knew it wasn't good. And she said, I need to talk to you outside. And I just was in utter shock. 9 years old, my baby is sitting there in the bed looking at me, waiting to know when we're going home. And the doctor says, well, we found a mass on her brain. And I said, my first words, I think pretty much anybody can identify was, is she going to live? And she looked right at me and said, I don't know. I don't know. And so fast forward to a brain surgery about 4 days later, just trying to process it all. And that brain surgery went well. Everything was great. Everybody felt like it was going to be amazing. She was going to be healed and there would never be any looking back. And that wasn't the case. About 9 months in, another tumor showed up on an MRI. And I remember it so well because I was on a vacation with one of the girls in this room down in St. Simon, just having a good old time, and that was just looming over me, and I just knew bad was coming. I just knew it. And so, come to find out, the tumor had come back, but this time it was very, very, very aggressive, and they were going to treat it with everything they had. And that's where our story kind of began. We started on a road of being told that she had a 50% survival rate. And I can remember when I was sitting in the room with the doctors, they had made a way for us to get out of the room and leave Mariah in the room with the nurse. And I remember going, oh my gosh, more bad news is coming. And they took us in a room and they said, this is not good. She's going to be in the hospital probably 75% of this year. She's going to have 6 weeks of radiation out of state. She's going to have a feeding tube put in. She's going to have 2 ports put in. And so we started on that journey of all those things happening. And one of the lowest points I can remember passing through on this journey was the day she had her feeding tube put in. I just thought, this has got to be one of the lowest points.
Wow.
And
so let me ask you at this point, you had terrible news. And then it was really hard. You had 4 days to process, but then you have surgery. You think everything's okay. You get great news. You think, okay, this is the worst is behind us. Then it comes crashing down again.
It does.
But then she starts responding well to treatments,
She does.
and then it gets worse again.
Yeah.
So where are you at this point? Your relationships with God, with your faith, with community, with your other daughter, with your husband? Like, where are you at this point emotionally and spiritually?
Well, I'll tell you one of the funny things about this journey. A friend who's sitting in this room will maybe remember that one of the first things, this is how desperate, and devastated I was selfishly. Like, my kid is laying in the bed. I'm looking at her sweet little head that they're about to cut open, 9 years old. And I'm just thinking, I'm looking at her trying to process that. And over here, I'm thinking about this fun race I'm signed up for to run with my girlfriends that was going to be like a fun party. And I couldn't wait to be a part of that group and do all that. And I can remember, like, the third day in the hospital, picking up the phone and calling this friend and saying, listen, I'm not going to be able to go on that race. And I remember her telling me back, Jennifer, what? That's the least of your concern.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, no, it's not. Like, I'm going to be left behind. I'm going to be forgotten about. I'm going to be left with this nightmare that we're going through. So that was like all my own selfish turmoil. And then you factor in with Gabby, our older daughter, we had to leave her in the crux of her beginning of her high school career and leave her and go away to Jacksonville to do the radiation 6 weeks. And that also took a hard hit on our family because we weren't there to nurture her, spend time with her, listen to her. It was really hard. And then Alex and I, my husband and I, we were just surviving. We were just going through the motions, and we were doing it well.
Yeah.
God was a part of our life. My relationship was basic. It was as needed.
Yeah.
And yet I knew that when there's a cancer diagnosis, there's really no other place to turn but God. But I didn't have a relationship with him, really.
Yeah. It was more like a pray as need basis, kind of for the big stuff. Yeah. So I heard a quote one time by Tim Keller. It said, it's not holiness that's the first step to accessing intimacy with God. It's helplessness.
Yeah.
So while the health battles were horrific, they were really only the catalyst to your lowest points, right? So walk us into the brokenness that ultimately led to your helplessness that brought you to God.
Yeah, the treatment cycle was pretty much benign. We did all that. We did a year's worth of chemo. Mariah was not, thankfully, admitted to the hospital as much as the doctors were expecting.
Yeah.
She was doing great. And we were like, man, this is amazing. They were like scratching their heads how well she was doing. And then about 3 months after her treatment stopped, we started noticing her having difficulties using her body. And so the doctors were testing her and found out that she had extreme, what they call necrosis on her brain, and that they were going to start treating her with high-dose steroids and things to try to stop it. But we didn't realize at the time that it wasn't going to be stopped.
So this on the brain, is that something that's caused from the cancer or from the treatment, or what does that have?
That no one could ever really tell us.
Wow.
No one could ever tell us.
So then you have an unknown on top of everything.
Yeah. We were just told they'd never seen this before. And so we started doing all the things to try to save her from getting worse, but before our eyes, she was getting worse and losing a different movement every day. And I can remember just not dealing with it well. I was getting angrier and angrier because I could not stop it. My husband couldn't stop it. I was spinning out of control, and I can remember like it was yesterday. We moved in with our parents for an interim while we were looking for a house, and in the middle of all this, who does that? But anyways, we did that.
It sounds like a great idea to me.
Yeah, at the time. And I can remember the first morning there, Mariah was set to be admitted to inpatient rehabilitation, and she was basically unable to walk at this time, but there was still some ability to she was all just contorted. And I can remember, and my parents probably can too, me literally dragging her out of the house, screaming at her, Mariah, get up. What is wrong with you? Get up. And just screaming like a angry, crazy person at my kid and dragging her out to the garage. And I remember my parents they didn't say anything. What are they going to say? And that was just one of many episodes that I had where I'm just losing my mind. A couple other times while we were staying with them. And the hard part was we were staying with them. So they were able to watch all of it unfold.
Yeah.
And I remember one particular day, probably the ugliest moment of all, Mariah was losing control of all of her bodily functions because of her lack of mobility. And she had an accident while she was in what we call her stander. And I remember, everybody standing back just watching me literally lose my mind. I think everybody was paralyzed, but I was literally just a mad woman. I was screaming at her, I can't believe you obscenities did this. I can't believe, how could you do this? I take her down and I throw her in the tub and I'm just treating her like an animal. I'm just in a terrible place. And during the same season, I'm talking months, I had been hitting walls, kicking walls, throwing things, all-time low.
Yeah.
Literally all-time low. Trying to hold it together, depressed. It was the darkest time of our journey because no one could help us. They were discharging her from therapies, from rehabs, saying, we can't help her. And we found out that we were so close to losing her because they couldn't stop the swelling. Wow. And my dad took me outside the day that I had lost my mind and just went off on Mariah. And he said, you are just an angry such and such. I can't believe how angry you are. And I just looked at him and I was just like, how am I not going to be angry? How am I not? This is awful. This is a nightmare. I wanted to die. Again, my kid is the one going through this whole dilemma, and I wanted to die. I wanted to die. I wasn't suicidal, and I don't know if you guys can understand, wanting to just strength. I didn't have the courage to face another day. It was dark, dark, dark times. We were just losing. We had no hope. We would beg God at Mariah's bedside every night, please, Lord, please don't let her have accidents. Please let her sleep. Please this, please that. It just brought out the ugliest.
So you're at this point fully broken and see
Totally.
it. But then 2017 happens and something starts to turn.
Yeah.
Tell me what happens.
My husband basically came to me and said, Jennifer, we're all afraid of you. I'm glad y'all can laugh about that.
There's a little bit of healthy fear for our husbands, but I think this was a little bit of a different thing, huh?
I'm not sure how to take those laughs. Too many of y'all know me. So he said, we're really afraid of you. Basically, we just don't know what you're going to do next.
Yeah, you were fully unpredictable, but not in a way where people were genuinely felt like they had to stand back to just see what you would do.
Like, what woman punches walls in her parents' house, nonetheless?
Yeah.
I'm thankful I didn't actually get a hole, but... So I started seeking out some counseling after I was angry that he said that to me at first. I was really just like, whatever, but the Lord really moved my heart and he opened my eyes to see, you're everywhere, you're all over the place and you're not doing well. So I did connect with some counseling. I started counseling every week, and then I started doing what's called prayer ministry as well, which is really digging deep, a combination of counseling and prayer together, and really just kind of examining some roots of some things that I was thinking about myself and I was thinking about God. And it came out in one of those sessions. One of the ministers said to me, he said, it sounds like you just don't trust that God is good. And I said, not at all. Yeah. No way. Everything's gone to pot. No way. I've lost all of my friends. I can't handle my situation. Like, my daughter is not good. Everything, my other daughter is forgotten about. No, God is not good. I had a desire to have a relationship, but I did not believe he was good.
Yeah.
And so many times in church, we would sing a song about him being good, and I would just clench up because I'm like, mm-mm.
Wow.
Mm-mm. So I pressed in, though. I pressed in because I started to desire it myself, started to peel back the layers, started to hear from the Lord. I started to notice some things about myself, some patterns that I had held on to, some beliefs I had about myself that were contributing to my relationships with everybody around me, and I just really started to want to have healing. And little by little, pressing in, the Lord allowed me to, he spoke to me. He would gently say, see, that's not a great way to react. Or see, maybe you could change your countenance and maybe someone would want to approach you more. Maybe you're not very approachable because they're afraid of you. There's that fear coming back in there.
Yeah.
So God really started to just honestly minister to me. And it's okay because he doesn't do it in a point his finger kind of way. But he does, if you desire it, he does talk to you. He does tell you what's not okay.
Yeah. And then gives you the power within to make a change.
And
so from before the journey, tell me what your thought of what community was and what you wanted with community. And after that 2017 shift, when you got counseling, when you got help, and when you allowed the Lord to start doing a work in your life, what is your view of community now?
Community is such a big part of my life. Like I was telling you all, I was so afraid to lose my friend group and miss out, and I did.
Yeah.
I lost out. I missed out. And the more I tried to cling to people and pull people in on my own, it was not going well. Mm-hmm. And I got to a point where I was just like, Lord, why don't people see me? Why don't people see us? Like, we would walk through the church hallways and it felt like we were invisible. I was so mad. There comes the anger back in again. But I was so mad that people didn't see, like a bald child in a wheelchair, and why didn't people come around us? I wanted to manipulate it to happen. I wanted to force it to happening, and I just kept holding the entire world accountable for that. And I remember just kind of getting to a place of full surrender, just desperation, like I can't do this, and I don't know what else to do, Lord. You're going to have to make a way. And I started really trying to look inward about how I was when people approached me. Did I allow them to partner with me? Did I allow them to help us? Did I allow them to know me? Mm-hmm. Was I vulnerable? And I realized that I wasn't. I was very shut off to people, and because I was angry. Mm-hmm. And so I noticed just a few small changes in how I was, like in my countenance. I would start to give people the nerve to maybe approach the bench, and come around me and say, well, she seems like she's a little nicer. And so little as time went on, it was like we were starting to be seen. And it was not the scene that I wanted that was all about me. It was a scene that says, here's a need we can meet in you, and here's another need we can hold. We can celebrate Mariah, and we can celebrate you. And before I could even realize what's happening, like, we have an expansive amount of friends celebrating, holding us up in prayer, and surrounding us. And it's really truly become, because I have surrendered. I have stopped trying to manipulate, stopped trying to control, and stopped holding everybody else accountable to fill me up in a way that only he can. And that, honestly, if I could say one good thing today, it is take people off the cross. Stop crucifying them for everything that they can't do for you, because people can't meet your needs. Mm-hmm. They can't.
That's so good. So, let's hear it. So one theme that I hear over and over and over is angry, mad, mad, angry, mad, mad. In your process of healing, you've learned what all that anger really was. What have you found out that it actually was, and how do you know now how to appropriately deal with it?
Well, it was fear and a lot of sadness. And when you start talking about that and realizing that you cannot control anything, I mean, y'all, when you're sitting in the darkness waiting for the doctor to call you with the results of an MRI that will make or break your child's life, basically, you go to the dark places. You go to what would this look like if it's bad and they've told you that she can't be treated for it again. It's not treatable. Or what does it look like if she doesn't have a reoccurrence? And so you go to the darkest of places, and that's where you say to the Lord, okay, God, whatever it looks like, I have to surrender my child to you. Wow. And so I think the first thing I have to say to answer your question is you can't control anything. And if you can tell yourself that every single day, then that is your biggest gift. You can't control anything. Nothing. And just submitting to him, staying in his presence. He is the vine. We have to stay connected to him, or else we can't bear fruit. And if we don't stay connected with him, I think that's what I've been really concentrating on doing, is staying connected to the Lord. So when I'm mad, when I'm sad, I take those feelings to him instead of the wall. And then he's able to, it doesn't feel like a response. All of my time in prayer counseling didn't feel like a response. It didn't feel like anything. But then I stand here now and I go look back and I go, he answered so many of my prayers, and I don't understand how that works. I don't understand the supernatural. I just know that I'm healed. I know that I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm not dwelling on people's disappointments. I'm leaning on him, and it's such freedom.
So the Jennifer that you were before all this happened, and the Jennifer that you are now, the bridge was something pretty horrific, right?
It was, yeah.
Would you change it?
Probably. There's so much change that has happened in healing in our family. We're in such a better place from where we were before this. Not like in the middle of it, but the family that we were before we ever went through cancer, we're so much better now.
Praise God. Okay, I have a question for you. Obviously, tonight's about restored. Now, some would look to your story and think restoration came from, her still being here, but she doesn't look and have the same exact function as she did before this whole thing started. But yet, you in this journey have found restoration.
Yeah.
What is it that you thought you lost that's been restored?
I thought I lost my relationships. I lost friendships. I lost my family. And because they were so damaged by my actions, they were so damaged. And God has completely started to restore those. And I'm telling you what, once the mother gets herself on a path of healing, it trickles out to the rest of the family. You have to get healing for your family, and then that's generational. And I'm thinking about my kids' kids and their grandkids and all of the people to follow behind them. And man, I'm so thankful that I chose to get healing and that God met me in the middle of it, and he is restoring our family.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
You are incredible. Your family's incredible. We're grateful for you.
Thank you.
Let's hear it for Jennifer, guys.
Thank you.